Hello, family of Rotary. My name is Stephanie Yurchik, Rotary International Director for Zones 33 and 34, and I welcome you to today's seminar on Career Development Strategies, Essential Tech Tools for Marketability. This series is part of our program called Rotary Works, a Zones 33 and 34 initiative by Rotarians for Rotarians and Rotaractors who find themselves in challenging circumstances where they may have lost a job, are underemployed, are facing the most challenging job market in decades for new graduates, or are looking to make a career transition. Rotary Works offers professional and skill development seminars, coaching, connecting, resources, a place to post and find job opportunities, and coming very soon, a one-time financial grant opportunity. Learn more by typing into your browser rotary.works. You'll be redirected to the Zones 33 and 34 website where you can learn more about Rotary Works and our offerings. You know, we've been living in a Zoom world, and chances are that you will be or are already working remotely. If you're looking for work, there's no doubt you'll be interviewing virtually. And it's important to understand how to leverage this video communication as well as any virtual platform etiquette. You know, there are plenty of tech tools out there, and while you may not have to understand and know how to use every single one, you should be at least knowledgeable about them if it's relevant to your career path or useful to your current or future employer. QuickBooks, Calendly, Trello boards, Google Drive, Canva, MailChimp, Hootsuite, Sprout Social, and on and on and on. There's just not enough time to do the research to determine the what, the why, the how, the effectiveness, or the cost of all these programs that can help you be more efficient and productive. However, today, we've brought you two knowledgeable professionals who will share their insights and recommendations. Our session today focuses on technical tools that are essential for your marketability. Our presenters today are Terry Weaver and Chris Jones. Chris Jones is a member of the Rotary Club of Cabarrus County in North Carolina. A past district governor, Chris is currently serving as a Zone 33 Innovative Club Advocate, and he was a Rotary coordinator in 2016 to 19. Chris has also served as a Council on Legislation representative and is a past president of the International Fellowship of Motorcycling Rotarians. He has had C-suite roles in several small and medium-sized businesses. He's also served Fortune 500 companies in senior leadership positions, leading teams with more than 300 members. After corporate America, Chris sought the rewards of entrepreneurship as well as serving in the nonprofit sector. Chris has hired and trained more than 1,000 people during his career. Terry is a member of the Rotary Club of Greenville, South Carolina. Also a past district governor, Terry currently serves as the District 7750 Innovative Club Advocate and District Trainer. He is also a Zone 33 Assistant Rotary Coordinator and will be a Council on Legislation representative in the year 2023. Additionally, he provides technical support to Zones 33 and 34. Terry is a veteran of corporate America, where he was president of a public company with more than 10,000 employees. He's interviewed thousands of people and has hired well over 500. He's also a serial entrepreneur. having started 2 companies, bought one, and sold 2. His part-time encore career is coaching small business owners. Both Chris and Terry have had extensive experience in the business world, running businesses, managing nonprofits, and consulting. And they do so effectively because they leverage technology to allow them to focus on what's important. If you have questions you'd like to pose to our presenters, please use the chat box at the bottom of your screen or at the top if you're on an iPad, and we will address them during the Q&A portion after the presentation. So Terry, let's start with you, and let's hear your thoughts on the tech world in which we live.
Thanks, Stephanie. Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. Like me, you may have concluded that virtual meetings and virtual business, doing business virtually, is now part of our personal toolbox and will be, like the song says, for the longest time, part of our Rotary lives, our personal lives, and our business lives. My prediction is for our natural lifetimes. This isn't going away. You know, this internet thing is likely to catch on, and I think this Zoom thing probably will too. And since we were last together, for example, I've taken on my first business coaching clients in 15 years of that practice virtually. Person I've never met, I've never been to his place of business, and I probably wouldn't have thought of doing that a year ago, nor maybe would he, but that's where we are today. So that being the case, it's probably time to invest in some serious skill building and perhaps some hardware to make the most of these virtual experiences. So for the first part of our program today, let's talk about your Zoom appearance as a job seeker. You know that you're going to be interviewing via Zoom or some comparable platform. So let's talk about how that's likely to work. Yes, you have a Zoom persona. Let's talk about appearance on Zoom. Appearance is everything as we know in person, and the same thing is true of Zoom. The first thing you want to think about, now I'm not picking on anybody here, but if you scan the gallery view, you will see examples of all of these don'ts. First, keep in mind that when anyone looks at anything on a screen, their standard in the back of their head is broadcast TV. That's what people are used to, and that's sort of what they mentally compare it against. So if you're particularly a job seeker or perhaps interested in putting a business together and doing your business startup via Zoom, you'll definitely want to keep that broadcast TV standard in mind because that's what you're shooting for. The first thing is camera and placement of the camera. The camera itself, your native device, perhaps laptop, perhaps notebook, may or may not have a great camera. If it doesn't, you want to go third party and get a good camera that you can control and manage and zoom and that sort of thing. But the other thing, big thing, is the placement of the camera. You'll notice my camera is right at my eye level. Now, the classic mistake is, of course, you put your laptop on the desk where you're used to using it, where the keyboard's convenient. That means that your camera is looking up into your chin, which is not particularly the best shot for most people. If you recall broadcast TV, you will hardly ever see a shot where the camera is not right at the broadcaster or host or anchor's eye level. So camera placement is really important. Second thing is your microphone. Some laptops and notebooks have good microphones, some don't. Some cameras have good microphones, some don't. My personal favorite is a lavalier mic right on my body. And we'll talk about some of those options in a minute. Lighting, same thing. Major thing about lighting is that it's in front of you, not behind you. If you look in your shot and you see any backlighting, that's a highly lit wall or room behind you, or worst case, an outside window or door, or even, there's almost no window treatment that will black out a lighting source behind you. And that, of course, fouls up the auto iris in your camera. Then the background. Now, while you're looking at that shot, take a look at the background itself. Is the background the other side of a room? Maybe a couple of doorways? Is the background something that is, shall we say, pleasant or professional? Ideally, if it's a live background, if it's an in-place background, it would be something like perhaps a bookcase or library looking sort of thing. That's a popular one. One of the other things you want to avoid in a background is anything moving. Ceiling fans are particularly annoying. And I have seen a background with a fireplace, which was somewhat charming. That worked out pretty well. But pretty much anything else moving in the background is a problem. Now, if you want to use a virtual background, my suggestion is you make a minor investment in a real green screen. That will keep you from moving in and out of the background that Zoom tries to suppress because it's not moving anywhere. My green screen behind me is a $16 piece of muslin that I bought from Amazon, stapled it onto some 1x3s that I happen to have in the garage. So it performs essentially like a professional green screen background. Then let's talk about wardrobe, also important in person and similarly important in Zoom. And here's my wardrobe suggestion for you as a job seeker or as someone starting up a business. It's the same suggestion I've been giving for the last 40 years, starting with Cub sales engineers in the 70s. And that was dress about a half a cut above the audience that you expect. If you expect the audience to be in polo shirts, you want to be wearing a button-down shirt. If you expect the audience to be in button-down shirts, you want to toss on a jacket. And if you expect the audience to be in jackets, it's probably time for a tie. Now that would be rare in today's business climate, but I guess it could happen. So, your default might be the, collared shirt, button-down shirt, spread collar shirt, whatever your preference is, and also jacket. Let's talk about the color as well. Something you totally want to avoid in a shirt is stripes. You will never see anybody on broadcast TV in stripes. It drives a video camera absolutely crazy. So the colors of choice are light blue. Sometimes white works, sometimes it doesn't. So a more of an ecru or ivory sort of shirt color would be the preference there, always solid. Now, here's where you want to take advantage of your Rotary Works coach. If you haven't yet applied for a Rotary Works coach, I'd encourage you to do that as soon as we get off this broadcast. What you want to do is you want to do a mock interview, an interview role play with another person, and your Rotary Works coach will do that with you. And you want to record that on your own Zoom account. You can get a Zoom account for free, and it turns out that there's a 40-minute limit to a free Zoom, but it doesn't apply to 2 people. So if it's you and your coach on Zoom, you can be on there all day for free. And you can record that locally on your machine from your account. I absolutely guarantee that you will make some changes in your Zoom persona after you see that recording. So let's talk quickly about sound and lighting. My personal favorite is a $12 product from either Amazon or Walmart. It's a little lavalier mic. These things work absolutely great. And you get literally professional quality sound. It's just like they were sitting right in front of you. Now, lighting. There are countless available lighting rigs, most of them LED and most of them tripods like these. These are designed for actually a tabletop mount, but they extend tall enough that you can also use them on the floor. Then there's a big brother of these that's in the $100 to $120 range. That's much larger panels, and you can actually use those at any height you want on floor stands. Again, we're talking about literally tiny amounts of money here to make yourself look better, and it could be the difference between not getting a job and getting a job. Now let's talk about some devices not to use. Again, I'm not out to offend anybody here, and if you may be in love with your iPhone or your iPad, but phones and tablets are not the best products for Zoom. And part of that's just the limitation of the device and the way the Zoom client works. Tablets, for example, have the disqualifying defect of the camera being over at one side. So either of two things happen. Either you're looking at the camera as you'd like to be, meaning you can't see the material on the screen, or you're looking at the screen, which means you appear to be looking away from the camera. They're also both difficult without some brackets and so forth, and a tripod. They're difficult to place at the height you need, which is up at this eye height. My eye height solution for my laptop is a free 6-inch tall cardboard box that I got from Amazon. Laptop just sits up on it, which of course would make it hard to type. So I solved that problem with a $30 wireless mouse and keyboard that sits on the desk in front of the laptop. Again, these are easy solutions, not expensive, but you do have to think about it. So let's have Chris Jones fill you in on a few other elements of your first impression from a technology point of view.
Thank you, Terry, for the introduction, and welcome everybody to our series. I want to talk to you a little bit today about your voicemail persona and some things that you want to do for that. So the first item on that list is really to script out and have an intentional greeting. So take that time really to go and script out exactly what you want your voicemail to say, and then make sure that it is inviting and upbeat as you record the message. I think that's a critical component. And when you're done with recording it, make sure you take the time and listen to it so that you approve of what you've recorded. So again, an intentional greeting, well scripted, and inviting and upbeat. Continuing on with your online persona. So the first thing I want to talk about here is LinkedIn. And there's an opening that you can have on LinkedIn, and you want to make sure that that opening is very well versed, very scripted, and also inviting and very upbeat. I also want to take a moment and suggest to you that you take some time and look through your social media. And you may need to do some cleanup. You may have been involved in some posts that you may not want a future employer to take a look at, or maybe you've been attached to some posts that you don't want to have up on your wall. But do take some time and go through your social media and do some general cleanup. I think that's an important thing to do. And the same thing would be true with any blogs that you have been involved with. Again, you want to go out and take a look at the blogs that you've written, blogs that you've participated in, and just take a couple of minutes and make sure that you have a very clean online presence so that your online persona is that which you want to present to future employers. Continuing on, let's talk about your email persona, and I'm going to bring it back to Terry to talk to you about that.
Thanks, Chris. Yes, you also have an e-persona in the form of email. Here's some suggestions about email. First of all, you do not want to miss one. If you find yourself trying to manage more than one email box, my suggestion is you figure out how to use the forwarding feature in those to funnel them to one. I personally have 5 or 6 different email aliases, one for the zone, one for the district, one for the club, one for my business, one for my private sector. And those all go to one email box. So I never miss an email. Then you want to sync your email, your calendar, and your contacts across all your devices. You never know whether you're going to be using a tablet, a phone, a laptop, or maybe a work computer versus a home computer. You want to come up with a scheme where those sync across all those devices. Now, Apple products do this particularly well through the iCloud, but if you happen to be a Windows and Android user, a product I like a whole lot is called GSyncIt. I think it's 20 bucks. And GSyncIt does a wonderful job of syncing my calendar, my contacts, and my email across both my Android mobile device and my Windows desktop or laptop. Let's think about response time. In today's world, the absolute outside boundary of acceptable response time is 24 hours. My suggestion would be you set your response time expectation at same day. That's what most people expect. They'll give you some slack to 24 hours. Now, that doesn't mean you have to answer the question, provide the data. It doesn't mean it has to be anything other than got your message, working on it. So just let the sender know that you heard them, you're working on it, and then that clears the response time expectation from that either same day or 24-hour benchmark. Response medium. You should try to conform to the medium of choice of the people communicating with you. In the case of a potential employer, that would be important, meaning that whatever they use to contact you is probably their medium of choice. Now, it drives me absolutely crazy when I send somebody an email expecting a response in email and they respond with a text. I'm, first of all, not looking for a response in a text. Maybe hours before I see that text, I'll probably be heads down in email for the next several hours myself. So that doesn't work well. If I send you a text, don't respond to me in email. And something that just drives me completely crazy is when I send somebody an email asking them for something, they respond by phone and leave me a voicemail that doesn't answer the question. It just says, call me back. Drives me absolutely nuts. So think about the response time and the response medium more or less together. Let's talk also about saved signature blocks. I'll show you some examples of those and make those consistent on all your devices. Above all else, use spell check. That's F7 as a shortcut on your keyboard. And of course, you can set most clients, such as Outlook, to run spell check automatically before sending. You want to take every advantage of those tools. Do watch for autocorrect. I can't count the number of times that rotaractors in my emails have become retractors. I can't seem to retrain Outlook against that one. But here are some examples of saved signature blocks. Now the saved signature blocks, this is an Outlook example, is right up in the top menu bar in the icon bar underneath the ribbon. And you'll notice I have a multiple of these. I have a lot of things that I use the same email client for. Now, here's what those look like. This one is my District 7750 role, and of course, the current year's theme. This is my zone role. And you'll notice that I've also now made these for 2122. So when I'm communicating with a DGE or a president-elect, I would use this one. And you'll notice also that these logos are nicely behaved over on the right-hand side of the text. And that's because this is done in a 2-cell table, 1 row, 2 columns, and so that hidden boundary in that table will keep you from the logo on the right-hand side moving around on you. Here's another example of my cart signature. Now you'll notice it has the logo in line, nothing over on the right-hand side. Here's my business signature. Again, logo on the right-hand side, content on the left. Now I want to mention also that these signature blocks are not limited in size. It's just an HTML file. So you could use a signature block for a whole response email. Maybe put together a generic response email that you'd use in most cases, pop that in as a signature block. You don't have to go find it, copy and paste it, but then you can edit it from there. So those are some ideas on how to use those tools. Let's move on to some other productivity tools and back to Chris.
Thanks, Terry. So using Microsoft Word when you're creating your resume and using some of the available tools in Word are very important. There are templates available in Word that you can use, but there are also online templates that you can get. I do recommend that you have 2 different versions of your resume. One version is the templated version that you're going to use to hand out to people. So it's the pretty version. And then you also are going to need a textual version. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But when you get into Microsoft Word, you'll see as you get in there, if you type in the search bar, type in the word resume, some sample resumes will come up down below. And you just select the style of the pretty resume that you want, and then you can start filling in the information from there. Very, very easy to use in Microsoft Word. So a couple of other tips and tricks for you. Again, make sure that you have separate templates for separate opportunities. So if you're applying for various types of jobs that may have different skill sets or different requirements, I recommend that you set up a template for each one of those opportunities so that you can quickly edit for the job that you're applying for. You also, again, as I mentioned earlier, want to have an available template for file uploads. Some of the employers that you're going to work with are going to ask you to upload a textual version, a non-pretty version of your resume. So you want to have one already prepared and ready to go. Getting back to the pretty version, let's talk about formatting for a second. So it's important that as you set up the pretty version that you have, that you're using the tabs that are available, you're creating tables inside the document, using text boxes to highlight certain things, maybe some skill sets that you have, or some success stories or accomplishments that you've done. And again, having those different templates and file types for system uploads versus handouts. And I know I've mentioned this a couple of times. I can't emphasize it enough. You know, when you're ready to apply for a position, you don't want to have to take the time to go create a textual version. You want to have it already ready to go. So inside of your pretty version, you have the opportunity to create some keyword matches, and I'll talk about how to do that in a moment. But you're going to want to match up some of your keywords to the skills that the employer is looking for, the position that you're applying for, and maybe some of the results that you have succeeded in that the employer happens to be looking for as well. And I'll walk you through how to do that in a second. You'll also want to make sure that you're using headings, and the headings are critical because if you happen to be uploading a pretty version of the resume, the robots that read those put more weight on the headings than they do on just standard text. So you'll notice that in this particular sample, the word education is actually already created with a heading style of heading 2. So heading 1 has a lot of weight to it. Heading 2 has a little bit less weight. Heading 3, a little bit less weight, etc. And then what you would do in the body underneath of that heading is to create some text that goes back from a keyword perspective, tying back to what you put into that heading. And again, this helps for robot searches and getting it through the robots so that your resume becomes one of the top looked at resumes instead of just one of the hundreds or possibly thousands that an employer happens to be getting. Also notice on the right-hand side of the screen, there is a resume assistant available in Microsoft Word that you can use to help you craft your resume. And I highly recommend that you use that tool. It will help you quite a bit. Another tool that you have available to you in the Microsoft Office suite is PowerPoint. And ways to use PowerPoint and ways that I've used it in the past are a couple of things. Number one, it can assist you in preparing for an interview. So think about the questions that you may be asked and start creating your responses for that in PowerPoint and start doing an outline of how you want to answer those different questions. You can also use PowerPoint to create your portfolio. And I have done this on a number of job interviews in the past where I have gone in with my portfolio in PowerPoint, and when somebody asked me some questions, I very quickly pulled out my iPad or my laptop and started walking them through some of the success stories that I have had in the past. And so PowerPoint works very well for that. The other way that you can use PowerPoint is to do some of your graphics layout that you may want to put into your pretty version of your resume. So there's a great set of graphics tools inside of PowerPoint that you can, once you've created it in PowerPoint, you can copy and then paste back into Microsoft Word. So very, very effective tools to use there. Next, I want to talk to you about how to package and how to prepare your computer for all of this. So key number one, I think here is planning ahead. So start thinking about the various types of jobs that you're going to be applying for. Think about the different organizations that you're going to be applying to. And then make sure that also that you have all of these available to you through the cloud. And Terry's going to talk a little bit more about cloud access in a couple of minutes. We've already talked a little bit about templates, but what I do for myself is I always organize my files under the various templates. So I might have a template for an operational position that I'm looking at, or I might have a file for a marketing and business development application that I'm looking at. So make sure that you organize your folders and files that way. Separate your parent folder from each opportunity, and then have subfolders for each of those items, like your cover letter, your resume, presentations, your PowerPoint presentations and portfolios, and all of that. Now, this is just the way that I do it. I think the key here is making sure that you set it up in a manner that makes it easy for you to find and share the various templates and resumes and documents that you have. It's very important that you organize it in such a way that you can quickly get to it and share it, because we are, in today's world, we're on internet time. Somebody asks a question, they're looking for the time of the internet to respond. So it's got to be very, very quick. So getting into cloud storage, I'm going to turn it back over to Terry.
Thanks, Chris. Everything I'm about to talk about is free. That is, if you're using moderate size storage under a gigabyte, and even above that, we're talking about a few dollars a month. So Google Drive is one of my personal favorites because it's collaborative. There's Google Docs, which emulates Microsoft Word, which would be a good place to store your resume, your cover letters, your templates, and so forth, which means that you can not only retrieve them, but also work on them anytime, any place. If you happen to have some downtime, waiting in somebody's lobby or whatever, and you have Wi-Fi access or even a hotspot, you can touch up a resume or touch up a cover letter for maybe tomorrow's communication with a potential employer. Google Sheets work like Excel spreadsheets. And again, those are not only retrievable, but also editable online. Google Forms are a way to probably more useful in your business life or your volunteer life. I use Google Forms all the time to ask for 3 or 4 questions from somebody perhaps who's coming to an event, and I want to know what they have for lunch, that sort of thing. Google Slides is an emulator of PowerPoint online. These slides were actually built on Google Slides between Chris and me. We laid this thing out, and then Chris built his slides on Google Slides. I interleaved my slides on Google Slides. We had a composite set that we were able to pull down to do the broadcast today. Now, I mentioned collaborative. These are also collaborative, meaning that in a spreadsheet, for example, multiple people can be in that spreadsheet at the same time, unlike a desktop version stored on a drive, where, of course, you have file locking there, so only one person can edit a spreadsheet simultaneously. That's not true of Google Drive. You can have more than one person in the same spreadsheet or in the same document. They just can't be editing the same place, meaning the same cell in a spreadsheet. I actually have a business coaching client that runs his business this way. When we have a meeting, there'll be 3 or 4 people with mobile devices, desktops, laptops, and so forth around the table, and they'll be working on something that's on the screen being projected simultaneously, doing those edits on the fly. Some handy file storage and retrieval schemes are Dropbox, OneDrive, which is Microsoft, iCloud, which is Apple. And this works great for storing finished copies of things like resumes, cover letters, and templates. Now, you can pull things down from here, work on them, and push them back up, but these aren't necessary collaborative tools like Google Drive. They are available, of course, anytime, any place. And then occasionally you'll want to send somebody a large file, maybe one of these PowerPoint portfolios that Chris was talking about. If there are a lot of graphics in there, and perhaps even an embedded video, those can easily get over the roughly 10 meg limitation of most email servers. So when you get over 10 meg, use tools like WeTransfer.com and UseSendIt.com. They both work exactly the same way. You drag in the file you want to send, you put the addressee's email address. If you don't have an account, you have to fill in your email address. You click send, and it uploads the file temporarily. These are usually good for about 7 to 10 days. And then sends a link to the person that you want to send the file to so they can pull it down. It also means that you can send the same large file to multiple recipients, some really, really handy tools. Much easier than pushing the same file up into a Dropbox than having to send several people a link to the Dropbox. You may or may not want them to have shared access to the whole folder in the Dropbox. These tools solve that problem. You're simply sharing one file to a temporary server where they can pull it down. So let's talk about managing your search. That'll be Chris.
Thanks, Terry. So for those of you that have been attending the series for a while, you may remember when Rich Salon was speaking, and he talked about the fact that your marketing plan is as important as your resume. So it's really critical that you spend some time to map out your marketing plan so that you can be successful. I want to add to that some of the folks that I've talked to over the years have said, I have no experience with this. I have no sales ability. And in reality, you do have sales ability. Think about when you wanted something really badly, you found a way to make it happen. It could be that you wanted to go to a special place for dinner, or you wanted to get a particular item from the store. If you want it bad enough, you figure out a way to get it. And you got to approach your job search from the same perspective. If you want this job bad enough, you're going to figure out a way to get it. But take the time to plan your marketing plan and put as much time into that as you do your resume, and you will see success. Some of the networking tools that you have available to you include LinkedIn. And I did see a question come up earlier on the screen that said, talk a little bit more about the turn on or I'm available for. And there is a feature in LinkedIn that if you're looking for a job, you can turn on that option that says, I am looking, or I am interested, or I'm transitioning. So take a look at that in LinkedIn, and you can turn that feature on along with updating your headline for your LinkedIn profile. Also, you have available to you DACDB, and I'll talk a little bit more about DACDB in a moment, but most important in your job search are your fellow Rotarians. I can't tell you how many Rotarians that I've worked with over the years that have been looking for a job, and the large percentage of them find their next opportunity because of their fellow Rotarians. It's a connection that was made through a connection. So work your current audience, your current fellow Rotarians, and let them help you find your next opportunity. So now let's talk about DACDB for a moment. So how do you use DACDB to help you look for a job? So on the desktop version, once you've logged into DACDB, you'll find the Find button, and you'll see the tab highlighted across the top there, Find. And when you get down to where it says name, email, or business name, let's say you're looking to go to work for a particular employer. So you type in that employer's name, or maybe you're looking for somebody that you happen to know their email for that you want to look up. So you put their email address in, or you happen to know their name, or maybe you happen to be wanting to get into a particular industry, such as HVAC or plumbing or whatever the case may be. You can type that into that search box, and or you can select the occupation button down there at the bottom and select what type of occupation it is that you're looking for, and then perform your search. Now, don't forget to check the boxes up on the top right that show guests, terminated, and global, so that you get a larger net to search by. So if you don't click those buttons, all you'll be searching by is in your own club and district. When you select those three buttons, you're going to get outside of your own club and district and start searching the network as a whole. There's also an available or a mobile application for DACDB, and it's not truly an application that you go to the App Store to buy. It's really a mobile website, and you can learn how to get to that. So when you log on to DACDB, or when you get to your login screen, on the right-hand side of that login screen are instructions on how to get to m.dacdb.com. And that bottom link there shows you how to create a DACDB icon on your screen of your mobile device. So let's talk about how you use the mobile device. It works very similar to the desktop. So once you're into m.dacdb.com, there's no www there, you would click on Find Member. And once you click on that Find Member, you'll come to a screen very similar to the desktop version, where you're going to type in a person's name or their email or their business name or whatever the case is that you're searching for. And don't forget to click on that global button, and then you can click search. So now you have the power of DACDB at your fingertips, right in the palm of your hand, to be able to help you with some of the searches that you're doing. So getting back to what I was mentioning earlier, where Rich Salam was talking about your marketing plan is just as important as your resume, I want to emphasize a couple of other points. Your technology persona really does matter. So take the time to go through some of the items that Terry and I have talked about today. Make that first impression a lasting impression, because you only have one opportunity at a first impression. So it's really important that you have your technology ready to go for you. I can't emphasize enough making sure that you have a robot-friendly version of your resume, both a textual version as well as a pretty version that is using items like headings and keywords matching back to headings, so that you're getting the biggest bang for the buck. And I'm going to wrap all that up by simply saying this technology provides you the leverage that you need to find your next opportunity. So, you know, you probably have some questions. I'm sure there's been a number of questions that have come up in the chat today, and we're now going to move on to the question session, which is going to be moderated by past District Governor Marcy Ullum out of District 6990. Marcy, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Chris and Terry, for outstanding presentation. And yes, you're right. We have a number of questions. I'm going to start with Terry first. Terry, there were some folks asking about where to find equipment, and then several other folks in our audience, we love audience participation, weighed in suggesting Amazon. Of course, there's Best Buy. Didn't know if you had a specific recommendation or two you'd like to share.
Sure. Well, my go-to supplier, of course, is Amazon. And in fact, I helped another organization completely outfit a hybrid meeting strategy. We're talking with cables, with mics, with input-output devices, converters, et cetera. Every one of those pieces was available on Amazon, so that's a good place to go. I also was surprised at the low end of the kinds of things you can get from Walmart. So I usually just put the description of the device up in my Google search bar, and then of course Amazon, as well as some of these other suppliers, will pop up. I've also learned, of course, that there are people who will sell you something for lower than Amazon's price. So in that case, you grab the product name out of the Amazon search, drop that back into a Google search, and you may find Newegg, several other electronic suppliers that have the exact same device right off the shelf, new in the box, at a lower price.
Thank you. Chris, there was a comment. You had a phrase on your slide referencing LinkedIn that said open to, and I think there's some folks asking for clarification of that.
Thanks, Marcy. So the open to really means that you're open to looking for a job or open to transitioning to a new job. And that is a setting that you can set up on your LinkedIn profile. And what that does is it actually puts a ring around your picture so that it stands out a little bit more, that says that you're open to whatever the case may be, looking for another job or transitioning, et cetera. So take advantage of that. Also take advantage of updating and beefing up your headline on LinkedIn so that you can find that next position that you're looking for.
Great, thanks. So there's a question about Zoom. Does Zoom have limitations for someone who subscribes to the free version? And I'm not sure who that should go to, because you both.
Well, I'll start, and then Terry can pick up from there. So Zoom works pretty slick if you're having a one-on-one conversation, because there is no limit on time if you're doing just a simple one-to-one. If you're doing a one-to-many, meaning that you're the host and using your account, then you are limited to 40 minutes. So you can use it in either way. Just know that if you're going one-to-many, that you have that limit of 40 minutes. Terry?
That's all I would have to say about that, except that in the free version, you are also able to record, not to the cloud, but to your local device. So you'll need to figure out where exactly that's recorded on your local device. It'll be, I think, in a Zoom, in a subdirectory named Zoom, but you can Google that and figure out where it's stored on your operating system.
I'd also like to point out that Maureen in the chat has indicated that Zoom has a discount for Rotarians. So there's something to take advantage of. Next question, and this could go to either one of you or both. I'm seeking a position as a creative director. I've created a website using WordPress to showcase my portfolio. Can I share my screen in an interview and work from the gallery view in that site, or do you recommend I replicate that work in PowerPoint for Zoom interviews?
So I'll start off with that. It's great that you have the ability to share your screen, but sometimes technology gets in the way. As great as technology is, so I always recommend that you have a backup copy available to go to, such as having that portfolio downloaded into a PowerPoint and be able to use that in the event that it's necessary. For example, for our slide presentation here today, both Terry and I, if we had a technology problem, had printouts that we could go by.
Terry, do you have any additional?
If you can show a website live successfully during a screen share, which you can do. Now, keep in mind that there's always some lag to that. So the other person's going to be seeing what you're talking about, perhaps, a second or so later. And my rule is basically this: for anything that is mission critical, such as a production for several hundred people, I would never count on playing a video off the web or demonstrating something live off the web. I'd always do that in screenshots dropped into PowerPoint. You can animate PowerPoint so that screenshots look very much like a live site. I've seen people faked out by that.
Given that technology is constantly changing, how do you suggest I keep up with changes, especially since I don't want to spend all my time Googling new tech?
Well, stick around young Rotarians. You know, the quick story. So I worked for a gentleman back in my 20s, and later on in life, I ran back into him, and he had gone part-time at a retail store that I had started with a long, long time ago. And ironically, my son became his boss. And so it went full circle. But I asked him, I said, why are you still working here and working part-time? He said, it's really simple. I want to keep up with things, and staying around young people keeps me young. But also, I would recommend that you subscribe to some really good newsletters. CNET is one of my favorites. I have a couple of different subscriptions that are free for CNET newsletters that keep me up to date on what's going on in the world of technology. Terry?
I think being active in more than one dimension of your life is a big part of this. And meaning that I find the crossover between my part-time business coaching life and my Rotary life is absolutely incredible. I learn things from both sides. I learn things in my Rotary life that I can use in business. Learn things from my clients that I can use in Rotary. So some of the tips and tricks we've talked about here today, I learned elsewhere.
Great. So here's a good question, just a basic question that I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about as they're writing a resume. Is there a recommended font style or font size?
My recommended font size for something on screen would be no smaller than 24 points. I'm just personally partial to the Arial font style with respect to slides. That's not for everybody, but that's one I like. So I use that. With respect to anything that you're posting on the web, of course, there are only a handful of web compatible fonts. Arial's one, Times Roman's another. There are only a few. So if you pick some offbeat font that looks good to you on your machine because you have the font on board, it may look completely different to somebody else. So I'd stick to those sort of, shall we say, mainstream fonts. Now, what you want to do in a slide presentation is you want to go for the biggest font that'll fit. So that's somewhere between 24, 32, even 36 with respect to text, and then maybe sub-items, maybe a notch smaller than that.
And for your resume, I also recommend Arial and a font size of really no less than 10, preferably 12.
Great. So there was some questions about DACDB. Do you have access? Do all people have access to use DACDB? Do you need permissions? Also clarification about the ability to search for professions. Is that a standard now with DACDB? It used to be it was an add-on. Districts had to purchase it as an add-on.
Okay, so I'll start with that, and then Terry can jump on after. So any Rotarian who is in a club and or a district that uses DACDB automatically has access to DACDB. Your search capabilities are limited to your security level. So it depends on what your security level is as to how far and wide your search will go. In terms of searching on professions, that is just part of the search tool that's there. I think what the individual may be referring to is an old R2R program that DACDB had that you did have to pay for, which was an advertising program. But in terms of being able to search on professions, you can do that right through the search bar.
You will find that some members have professions entered and some don't. Almost every member has a classification entered. So don't disregard the classification box as well. That would be more of the, shall we say, business category, if you will, or it could be perhaps an employment category. Clubs cast classifications different ways, but I wouldn't miss either bet. And also mention that in search, less is more. If you put in a first name and a last name, you're going to get poorer results than if you just put in either the first name or the last name. And DACDB is also a string search. So if you put in John, you're going to get everybody named John. You're going to get companies with JOHN in the company name somewhere. You're going to get all the Johnsons, etc. So just be aware that that's the way it works. It's a character string search. But in my experience with search, always less is more. Search on just a basic keyword and you'll get a bigger, wider net of results.
And thanks, and due to time, we're going to wrap up with this final question, which is, there were several pieces of equipment that were suggested and software. Can you suggest a minimum amount of money I might need to spend to get the basic equipment I need? If I were getting ready to budget it, what would that be?
Again, of the items that I highlighted on the screen, I think I have, and this is my studio here, which used to be a library. Other than the laptop itself, I have easily less than $300. If it hadn't been for buying a third-party camera, it'd be less than $200. I mean, the umbrella lights were $70, the green screen was $16, the microphone was $12. I mean, this stuff is really cheap.
Yeah, and you know, if you sign up for a Google account, you can get access to Google Docs and Google Slides and all of that really for no charge. And if you wanted to have Microsoft Word or Microsoft Office, you can sign up for that for as little as $9.95 a month to get the whole suite. So yeah, I think Terry's right in the ballpark. $200-250 would get you everything you need.
Great. We have, what I'm going to suggest is that people take a look at the chat, because there's some great folks in the audience who have provided some interesting pieces of information that are helpful. And right now we're going to turn it back to Rotary International Director Stephanie Urchik.
Thanks very much, Marcy. And thank you, Terry and Chris, for truly an excellent presentation. I hope that all of you watching today are going to be able to use 1, 2, 3, or more of these ideas from this session. All of these strategies will help you leverage the digital world in which we now live. And if you'd like to chat further with Terry or Chris, here is their contact information. I also want to thank our behind-the-scenes support team who made the technical magic happen today. Marcy Ullum from District 6990 and Patrick Eakes from District 7690. Let me remind you that Rotary Works Career Coaching is available to any Rotarian or Rotaractor who would like more individualized mentoring. We have dozens of coaches ready to help. If you think having a one-on-one coach would be beneficial, or if you would like to volunteer as a coach, visit rotary.works and look for the links in the right-hand column. Our Impact Fund is designed to support members with a small grant that will ease concerns during unanticipated career transitions. Any amount is appreciated, and if you would like to donate, please reach out to me. If there are topics of interest that you'd like to see in a future session, please put those in the chat area as well. And finally, you're invited to get involved in our initiative. If you're interested in providing vocational service to Rotarians and Rotaractors in our zones, please feel free to reach out to me or any member of the Rotary Works team. I invite you to mark your calendars for upcoming events. Go to rotary.works and register now for more valuable sessions in our career development series. You'll also be able to find recordings of previous sessions at the website. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at our next seminar. Remember, Rotary works.